Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Scotland at 7 with me, Gordon Ross. Joining me in the studio this evening are regular contributors Sam Payton from the Save Loch Lomond campaign. Good evening, Sam.
Hi, Gordon. How are you?
I'm well, thanks, Sam. And also joining me this evening, Chris McCusker from the SNP Socialist Group. Welcome back, Chris.
Good evening, Gordon. Nice to be back.
Okay, so I'm going to press on immediately with the coronavirus update as normal. And as of 2 o'clock today, a total of 411,703 people in Scotland have been tested through NHS Scotland labs and UK government regional testing centres. Of these, 392,530 were confirmed negative. 19,173 were positive. There are 47 new confirmed cases of COVID-19. There are 0 reported deaths of people who have tested positive today. This will be an underestimate of the number of cases. Not everyone with the virus will display symptoms, and not all those with symptoms will be tested. Of the people who have tested positive, 258 were in hospital last night, 3 of whom were in intensive care. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus COVID-19 infection remains at 2,491. This number only includes those who have died in hospital, having received a positive test for the virus. Now, at the moment, we do not have the latest UK daily figures to give you, so I'm going to move on to our first story this evening. And that is that John Swinney has won in a no-confidence vote at Holyrood. The Scottish Parliament today, a vote of no confidence in the Cabinet Secretary for Education, John Swinney, was defeated by 67 votes to 58, with the Scottish Green MSPs all voting in support of Mr Swinney. The motion was brought forward by Labour MSP Ian Gray and was supported by the Conservatives, despite neither of the parties calling for the resignation of the English Education Secretary, despite the English exam results being downgraded by up to 40% and the UK government refusing to intervene. Now, Sam, let me come to you first for your response to this. Now, John Swinney has survived a no-confidence vote at Holyrood, much to many people's relief, including, I'm sure, Mr Swinney's. What do you make of this? Why was he being targeted like this? And what do you think was the point of this whole thing?
This was just absolute ludicrous and political points. Gordon, there was no need for this motion to be brought forward. At the end of the day, mistakes were made and rectified, and Ross Greer and the kids basically had a fantastic campaign, and they show how campaigning is done, that it's to basically get your voice heard, and John Swinney showed what a government minister should do, and that is to listen and to concerns, which he has done, and it has been sorted. So I just find it ironic that Labour and the Tories were calling for John Swinney to resign when down in England they've just had a complete disaster, if not worse, down there regarding the kids' exam results. So yeah, I think it's just been cheap, nasty political points going, and it's good to see that John Swinney is going to be staying. As a parent, he's done the right thing as far as I'm concerned. The Greens have done the right thing, and the kids, I'm proud that the kids stood up for their rights and they campaigned to get these results changed. They have worked hard, and what people are forgetting is they are stuck in a situation that nobody has ever been in before in terms of the history of Scottish education. And, and these kids, and for anybody to turn around and try and take that away from these kids, they need to have a really good look at themselves. They have dealt with this situation impeccably. They've been under strain that nobody else has ever experienced before, along with exams.
Indeed, yeah.
So as far as I'm concerned, anyone who's got anything to say about these kids getting the grades they deserve need to go and have a good look at themselves.
Okay, Sam, thank you. Chris, if I could come to you next for your reaction to Mr Swinney's survival of this no-confidence vote. It seems that the Labour Party has been gunning for Mr Swinney for a while now, haven't they? And they're claiming that this is down to not just this one event. They've said that he's mismanaged the entire education portfolio for years. How much truth is there in that, though?
You know, it's very disingenuous to say that. And I think that Sam eloquently covered all the points as to why this fiasco has came around. And make no mistake that John Swinney and Nicola Sturgeon both held their hands up, accepted the Green amendments because they were, you know, the right thing to do. The 4 points that Ross Greer had put to the Scottish Government, and they quite rightly, you know, as any competent and government acting with leadership and clarity, you know, basically done the right thing at the end of the day. And what annoys me more than ever about this afternoon's fiasco is that it took up parliamentary time for nothing less than grievance politics. That's all it was. That was the only one thing that Sam didn't mention, and that is quite and simple. You know, just grievance for grievance sake. You know, they can't touch the Scottish Government at this moment in time. You know, because of the whole COVID thing. So this was they seen this as a weak spot.
Chris,
but, you know, to be honest with you, they should have just done the maths, said that, you know, okay, they're going to be supported by the Greens. You know, let's just move on and discuss something, you know, that actually matters to Scotland.
Chris, can I ask you a question? As a political activist yourself, do you feel that the SNP government perhaps maybe mishandled the presentation of this? Because it's obvious to us all that despite the fact that the SQA revised the marks down so that they were more in keeping with previous exam results, there was always the backstop of children being able to appeal, particularly if they were expected to do really well, despite coming from a disadvantaged school. Do you think perhaps this has just maybe been a lesson to be learned on how to present these kinds of events, perhaps a PR failure?
Well, it'll come to no surprise to you, Gordon. You know, since as long as I've known you, I've always stated that the PR within the SNP is absolutely woeful. And you know, I make no bones about that. My elder brother runs his own PR house in Melbourne, and he just looks at this with absolute, you know, laughter. They have to be more proactive in the presentation of the policies. They also have to be more proactive in debunking all the crap that comes out of Westminster. And they also have to be proactive in cross collaboration with the other parties. As if way back in March, when I think Ross Greer first actually criticised the approach that the SQA and Scottish Government were taking, they should have taken that on board at that time, and thus avoided, you know, wasting everybody's time. Because at the end of the day, as Sam pointed out, the kids have worked hard. They've had a really tough time during COVID, and the last thing that they needed was to have their aspirations and their dreams dented. And you know, so you know, we should be celebrating kids, and we should also be celebrating the fact that, as Sam pointed out, there were kids there who were activists. They were out there and they were demonstrating for their rights.
Yes,
and that bodes well for Scotland's future.
Good, Chris. Well, I think that's a very positive way to end that particular item. Now, sadly, we've got to look at something which is particularly sad news, and of course, Of course, the Stonehaven train crash. Now, 3 people who died in yesterday's Stonehaven train crash have been named. The train driver, Brett McCulloch, the conductor, Donald Dinney, and the passenger, Christopher Stutchbury. The accident happened when the 6:38 a.m. Aberdeen to Glasgow service came off the tracks and slid down an embankment near Carmont, just west of Stonehaven yesterday. A further 6 people were also injured, 2 of whom remain in hospital, both in a stable condition. Visiting the site of the accident today, the Transport Secretary, Michael Matheson, said it was reasonable to presume that the weather had had an impact on the events, adding that he hoped the investigating authorities would advise whether efforts to address the challenges posed by extreme weather events should be stepped up. The Assistant Chief Constable, Judy Heaton, said, "We can confirm that a joint investigation into this tragic incident near Stonehaven yesterday is being conducted. Officers from Police Scotland, British Transport Police and the Office of Rail and Road are working together closely as the investigation seeks to establish the full circumstances of what happened and will utilise the skills of all agencies. The investigation, which will be carried out under the direction of the Crown Office and the Procurator Fiscal Service, is in parallel to an independent safety investigation by the Rail Accident Investigation Branch, the RAIB. The multi-agency response to the incident remains ongoing, and we are working with partners to support the family and friends of those involved, as well as the rail family and local community. I also want to thank the responders who attended yesterday and were faced with a challenging scene. Our thanks must also go to the local community who rallied around the emergency services with many offers of assistance, and we're grateful for your support. Our thoughts and our condolences are with those affected at this difficult time." Sam, let me come to you first on this particular story. Now, I have to admit, I heard this story before it broke the other day because one of my clients happens to be a train driver, and he told me what had happened. I was appalled at just how easily a big locomotive can jump the tracks and end up down an embankment like this. But it seems at least that there are multiple investigations going on at the moment. But do you think, Sam, perhaps there's some kind of tie-in here between not just the severe weather, but the fact that Railtrack, the UK company which maintains the railway infrastructure, has perhaps been cutting back a lot of trees around the tracks? Could this have had some kind of impact, do you think, on the stability of the land around the railway line?
The thing is, I'm sure the investigators will kind of these points into account and basically make the decision on that one. But it was just absolutely horrendous, and I know we all complain about the trains being off during bad weather and so forth, and this just kind of brings it home that there is a reason why the trains go off during bad weather. You know, and maybe hopefully in the future we can all kind of just have a wee kind of think before we start moaning at ScotRail. But yeah, you know, it's just absolutely heartbreaking that this has happened, and it's such tragedy, and people have lost their lives, and those poor families. There's not much more I can say about it, Gordon. I don't feel comfortable talking about, you know, these people have lost their lives. I'm sure through time we'll find out exactly what will happen and what's happened, and you know, they're the experts. They'll know exactly, you know, whether, you know, what the reasons were behind it and everything. At the moment, I just send my condolences to the families that have been affected by this, and wish the ones that are in hospital a speedy recovery.
Okay, Sam, thank you. Chris, if I could come to you on the topic of rail safety. Now, I know that you are involved in a different form of transport and safety. Is there a lesson to be learned from this about the kind of weather that we're now experiencing? These sudden flash floods. Do you think we're likely to see more of these kind of events if the weather continues to become so unpredictable?
Well, what we have to point out, Gordon, is the fact that the tracks and the overhead lines are run by a company that the Scottish Government are not in control of. and it's actually the trains and the staff that
Yeah.
Scotland are in control of. And as long as we have that arrangement, nobody can actually take ownership for the whole thing. So, I mean, I would like to see, good collaboration between Network Rail and ScotRail in the investigation of this. And I'll augment exactly what Sam said, that my heart goes out to the three people that sadly lost their life. I'm aware that the train driver and the conductor were actually trade union members.
Yeah.
So my solidarity goes out to them and their families. And at this moment in time, it's only right and proper that full investigation is done, and whatever comes out of that investigation is,
Yeah.
will be dealt with at that time.
I'm interested, actually, Chris, as to just how many organisations are involved in the in the investigation, because we've got the Crown Office, the Procurator Fiscal's Office, the police, and all of these services involved, as well as the Rail Accident Investigation Branch as well. They are really going for this, aren't they? They're really determined to find out what's happened here.
Yeah, and it's only right that it should be a multiple faceted investigation to unearth the real facts as to why the train left the tracks. I heard one train commentator. I found that actually quite bizarre that Sky News managed to get a train commentator. And he was alluding to the fact that the rolling stock had been in use for 40 years.
Well,
what I would strongly avoid that gentleman. I would advise him to not make reference to the fact that a train company are using rolling stock of that age. But the fact that the matter lies is that the weather conditions have to be taken into consideration. I
the
found
weather
it
was
actually
exceptional, Chris.
well, I find it absolutely bizarre that on the east coast of the country, yesterday, it was absolutely throwing down buckets.
Yeah.
Whereas at the west coast, I was sitting out on my patio, quite happily having a cup of coffee. So I mean, it was really
Very
right down the
unpredictable.
middle of the country.
Yeah.
So, that has to obviously be taken into consideration.
There was, having spoken to this train driver the other day, Chris, he was telling me, because apparently he'd heard this from his headquarters, that the train had been recalled to Stonehaven. And this is second hand, obviously. But it seems as if there have been two landslides, one in front of the train and one behind it. But as I say, this has not been verified officially, but whatever happened, Chris, obviously these are exceptional circumstances with the kind of weather that the East Coast experienced yesterday. In some places having a month's worth of rain in a single hour, which I think
that's what I was going to say to you, Gordon, because we only need to look back at the fact that the massive landslide that occurred at the Rest and Be Thankful, where the roads were cut off for a couple of days, and they managed to reopen the old military road, only for that to be reclosed again because of the weather forecast. So I think the weather forecasters were all caught on the hop on this one, and I know for a fact my time in the airport. You go to the weather room, you assess the weather forecast for the flight that you're dispatching, and if there's any anomalies in the weather whatsoever, it
You don't
has to
go.
get kicked upstairs and someone else has to take the decision. So, you know,
Okay.
you probably hope that that would be the same situation as well.
Okay, Chris. Well, listen, I'll need to leave it there for now, but obviously we'll keep an eye on that story as it develops. Moving on now to the Labour Party, and Labour chiefs warn that the party is in peril in Scotland. The SNP has said that Richard Leonard is completely out of touch with his own party after a leaked report from a think tank linked to Gordon Brown warned that Scottish Labour is in peril and claimed that the scarring could be permanent. The warning comes the day after the former General Secretary of Scottish Labour admitted that independence is now the established majority position in Scotland. Brian Roy, who held the role until August 2019, tweeted, "I suspect that this will be the beginning of a sustained majority in favour of independence." A YouGov poll published yesterday also revealed that almost half of Labour voters believe that Scotland should be an independent country. The poll shows that just 10% of people in Scotland believe that Richard Leonard is doing well as leader of Scottish Labour. Almost 4 times as many, 37%, think that he's doing a bad job. Tom Arthur, MSP, said Labour now face the inescapable choice of either getting on the right side of democracy or facing another electoral disaster, given that polls show that almost half of Labour voters now support independence. Now, Sam, let me come to you first on this. And it probably comes as no surprise to you or to me that the Labour Party's not been doing very well, but it seems that the Labour Party's been very slow to catch on. And they've had to wait until now for this report to tell them that they're not doing very well. Surely they must have noticed from the way they've been performing in recent elections.
Yeah, they're a bit late to the party, aren't they, Gordon? I'm sure if they kind of just spoke to the people on the ground and in the street, they would know this. So it just goes to show you that they rely on polls and things rather than actually speaking to constituents and actually getting out there and speaking to the people. Well, yeah, at the end of the day, they're in trouble. We all know that. We've been saying that on the programme so many times. About Richard Leonard, yeah, we've been saying that so many times. Yeah.
What about, Sam, what about
watch this programme.
What about the news? What about the news that the support for independence within the Labour Party has now reached 50%? The last I looked, actually, it was 40%. So it's gone up 10 clear points.
Yeah, it's a jump. I mean, a lot of people that I know who are Labour supporters support independence. So it's not surprising. And the way the Scottish Government have dealt with the COVID situation, again, that's not surprising that support for independence has jumped. I know people who would have in the past supported the union are now rethinking everything, re-evaluating everything because of the Scottish Government's handling of the COVID situation. So, yeah, as I say, they're a bit late to the party, Gordon.
They seem to be.
Where have they been hiding? Where have they been hiding for the last wee while? You know, as I say, maybe they need to start kind of tuning into the programme and then maybe they would have known that and they wouldn't need to rely on polls.
Well, maybe we'll just
Maybe
need to make sure that more Labour voters watch Broadcasting Scotland.
Maybe what we need to do is get a couple of Labour MSPs on the show. I'm playing devil's advocate here, Gordon, but get a couple of Labour MSPs and we can educate them.
Be interesting to get them in and have their own reaction, Sam. Thank you. Chris, I'm sure this is absolutely no surprise to you that Labour is doing so badly that they feel they need a report to tell them they're doing badly.
Well, I mean, I could have actually provided that report for them back in 2014. There was, I had a conversation with Jim Murphy at the time, and I took the in telling them that there was 14,500 members within the SNP trade union group, to which I'm member secretary. And he was like a donkey on charrettes when he was denying it. So what what we have tried to do, or what we do try and do within the trade union group, is that we try and work alongside like-minded trade unionists who see that the need for Scotland to have its own powers, and that's alongside working with the STUC.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're not asking them to come over to the SNP in any such shape or fashion. Because once Scotland becomes independent, we will need a credible opposition to hold the controlling government to account. But
Okay.
what they have to take on board is, that they should hold on to their core values, but they should actually think about their country, not about the union first.
Okay, listen, Chris, I'm sorry, we'll have to leave that subject there. Thank you for that. And a minister has called on the UK to prioritise tariff talks. The Trade Minister, Ivan McKee, is calling for intensified efforts to have the US tariffs lifted on Scottish goods, including single malt whisky. He's urged the UK government to act after the US announced it was retaining 25% tariffs on a range of products from the UK and the EU. However, the US has removed its 25% tariff on biscuits and shortbread and held off on extending tariffs to a new range of goods, including salmon fillets, blended whisky and gin, which would have caused further damage to the Scottish economy. Mr McKee has called on the UK government to prioritise attempts to persuade the US to lift all the sanctions and save jobs. Okay, Chris, I'm going to come to you first with this one. Now, this has been running for a while. The United States put in place these tariffs. Originally, I think it was Donald Trump who instigated this. Correct me if I'm wrong, because of what was happening with Europe. But now Scotland's been caught up in this sort of dragnet. How on earth are we going to get out of it?
Well, it wasn't just because of Europe. Donald Trump put these sanctions in place. And that's what they are. They are sanctions.
Yeah.
And this was all down to do with aircraft building, predominantly Bombardier in Northern Ireland, and hence why he's.
Yeah.
Well, there was other ones as well. There was Airbus and there was Boeing.
Yeah, I think the subsidies to Airbus, Mr. Trump objected to.
At the end of the day, what it's basically a diplomatic tit for tat, and I absolutely buckled double this morning when I actually heard them. The Tory minister, the Tory trade minister, I don't know who the heck it is, but he was basically crying. It
was Greg Hands.
Greg Hands, yeah. It was absolutely brilliant that they managed to take away the duty on shortbread, and I was like, "That what?"
Yep. Apparently, he mentioned that whisky is the UK's biggest food and drink export.
Well, I'm glad that you pointed that out because I was just about to do it, but I had a wee bit of water in the back of my throat there. But yes,
you probably need a wee whisky, Chris.
If I can afford it, aye. But and again, it just highlights the fact that they're holding on to us because of what we have, and they would be the green-eyed monsters if we were to leave, and we would be able to do everything on our own. And it's likened to back in the. You were telling me earlier on, Gordon, your age, so you'll remember this. But you remember back in the 70s, you had the Provy.
Yeah.
Well, the Provy kept you on the drip in order to get what you want. Every week you had to pay a wee price in order to get what you were trying to achieve, whether it was, a week away down at Blackpool or a week away down at Tara, Butland, and you had to pay the Provy for that actual loan, and then you had to pay it back in incremental stages every week. And that is exactly what the UK government are treating Scotland like. They're treating it like the Provy.
fair enough, Chris. Sam, if I could bring you in at this point. I know I'm not sure you're a big whiskey drinker, Sam, but what's your take on this? Whiskey taxes going up in the States, and we've got to bring them down.
Oh yeah, we definitely. Oh, I love whiskey. There's nothing beats a good whiskey. That was my father's favourite way of treating our toothache and things when we were kiddies. But yeah,
I remember the days, Sam.
Oh, they were the days when you could get away with doing stuff
Bunch
like
of drunk kids with toothache.
Oh yeah, but at least we slept all night. Anyway, enough about our parenting skills or pre-parenting skills. But no, as Chris says, we get treated a bit like the Provi, but I would just like to say I'm not as old as you guys, so I don't really remember the 70s as such. But however...
Just be glad.
But no.
Glad you don't remember.
But however, it's one of those things. Trump had brought these things in, and I mean, it's nice of them to kind of waiver the tariffs on the shortbread, but
Trump likes to start trade wars, and I think he's just having to go at Europe, he's having to go at China.
That's what he's doing. That's all he's doing. It's just Trump likes to make headlines, and by making headlines, he doesn't care how he does it. He doesn't care if he's lying. He doesn't care if he's causing trouble.
And he doesn't care how many jobs are lost.
He doesn't. He does not care. So at the end of the day, that's all it is Trump just trying to cause trouble, and he knows the tensions are high between Scotland and England, and he's just adding to that to his advantage.
Okay, Sam, thanks very much. We're going to move on now. Super trawlers ramp up activity in UK protected waters during a lockdown. Super trawlers vastly stepped up their fishing in the UK's protected waters during the coronavirus lockdown earlier this year, while most of the UK's smaller vessels were confined to port. The amount of time super trawlers spent fishing in marine protected areas in the first half of this year was nearly double that they spent in waters of the whole of last year, according to Greenpeace investigation. There were 23 super trawlers catching fish in UK protected areas in the period, none of them UK owned. The vessels, more than 100 metres long and each capable of catching and carrying thousands of tonnes of fish, spent 5,590 hours in 19 of the UK's marine protected areas in the first 6 months of 2020, compared to 2,963 hours in 39 protected areas in the whole of last year. Greenpeace data shows a massive increase in super trawler activity since 2017, when they spent 475 hours in total fishing in the UK's protected areas. Now, I'm going to come to you first, Sam. This sounds to me like a case of while the cat's away, the mouse will play, that there's nobody watching the fishing grounds, and so these huge trawlers are moving in and hoovering up all of the fish.
Yeah, that's the kind of way I took it as well, Gordon. And when you were reading that story, I didn't know this had happened, and it is, it's very much. What I would like to know is, where is the UK government in protecting these protected areas? I mean, they must have been aware that this was going on. They're trying. There's no way anyone can tell me that the UK government can sit back and say, "Oh, we didn't realise this was happening." And the thing is, with all the fish, how much of that fish has been thrown back, dead, back into the areas, it's just complete wastage and it's devastation. Then if the UK government is quick enough to want to put the Royal Navy out to stop refugees coming and landing on the shores of the south of England, I'm sure they could actually turn round and put the Royal Navy, around our protected areas.
Okay, Sam, thank you for that. Chris, I dare say, again, you'll not be surprised by this, but the UK government appears to have taken its eye very, very much off the ball here when it comes to fishing, especially after making such a big deal over trying to get a better share of the catch for British trawlermen by becoming independent of Europe. And now we're seeing these massive super trawlers moving into our waters and sucking up everything that these fishermen would have caught.
Well, I'm so happy to hear Sam making that excellent point about the fact that the UK government are are solely concentrated on the English Channel. For a couple of hundred allegedly refugees trying to cross the Channel in boats that look right off of the production line, and all wearing life jackets and all the rest of it. So nobody's going to tell me that these human traffickers have suddenly got an attack of health and safety. But what we actually need to point out here is the fact that the lack of surface vessels that actually patrol around the British
It's the
Islands.
fisheries protection vessels that are missing, isn't it?
Yeah, but if we actually had a proper allocation of surface vessels in order to patrol the whole of the UK, because as far as I'm aware, from a Scottish point of view, we have none stationed in Scotland. They're all stationed down in either Portsmouth or Plymouth.
I think, Chris, that there are 3 fishery protection vessels allocated to Scotland. I'm not sure where they are at the moment, though. Yep. But they are supposed to be responsible for looking after the Scottish sector. But this story appears to be mostly about the English waters, Chris, rather than the Scottish ones particularly. They say UK protected areas, so that's a very big area.
What I was actually trying to point out is the fact that there should be a lot more surveillance boats in the actual fishing areas, in order to stop these super trawlers. Because I've watched the wildlife channels and stuff like that, and the damage that the super trawlers do. They are indiscriminate. They will catch absolutely anything.
Yeah.
And if a dolphin gets into the nets or seals get into the nets, they just end up dead.
The trawls also, they destroy the seabed as well, Chris, I understand, with the trawls.
Yeah.
Anyway, this report has come from Greenpeace, so I think that maybe explains why they're focusing so much on this at the moment. Anyway, we need to move on. Unfortunately, we're running a little bit late, so I'm going to move to our next story. Workers from state factories have joined in mass protest against the Belarus president. Workers from state-run industrial plants joined tens of thousands of people in a 5th day of protests against the Belarusian president, Alexander Lukashenko, despite a violent crackdown that has prompted the West to consider new sanctions. Protesters formed human chains and marched in Minsk, joined by at least 2 television presenters from the tightly controlled state media, who resigned in protest at the violence that followed Lukashenko's contested re-election. A former Soviet collective farm manager, Lukashenko is grappling to contain the biggest challenge in years to his rule of the country, seen by neighbouring Russia as a strategic buffer against NATO and the European Union. The protesters accuse Lukashenko of rigging last Sunday's presidential election to win a 6th term. The president, alleging a foreign-backed plot to destabilise the country, has dismissed the demonstrators as criminals and unemployed. The authorities began releasing some of the thousands of protesters who were detained this week. Some of those freed from a detention centre in Minsk had bruises and described being tightly packed inside cells and complained of mistreatment, including beatings. A spokesperson for the Interior Ministry declined an immediate comment. The 65-year-old Lukashenko has ruled for more than a quarter of a century, but faces increasing anger over his handling of the coronavirus pandemic, which he dismissed as a psychosis, a sluggish economy, and human rights. Anna Krusalina, a spokeswoman for the opposition leader, Svetlana Tikhonishaka, I can never pronounce this woman's name, I do apologise, who fled to neighbouring Lithuania early this week, saying that she feared for the safety of her children. She said she expected Tikhanovskaya to release a message later today. Sorry about the mispronunciations. Anyway, things seem to be getting an awful lot worse in Belarus. Let me come to you first, Sam. There are many women involved in this movement in Belarus, and I'm also told reliably that many of the demonstrators are young people as well. But it's notable that it was a female leader who felt so threatened that she had to be smuggled out. This is terrible for the country, and people apparently in Belarus are not renowned for taking to the streets. They're not particularly violent by nature. They seem to be appalled by the violence that's been meted out to them.
It's absolutely disgusting, Gordon. I mean, the people have been protesting and they've been doing it as peacefully as possible, but they've been met with violence. And I know one of the protests where a lot of women carrying flowers and dressed in white, and that took part. And, Lidashenko, I hope I've pronounced that right, the fact that he's turned around is saying that, it's unemployed and criminals, that just goes to show you the contempt that he holds for his own citizens of his country. At the end of the day, it's a bit like Boris Johnson, a bit like Trump. They're not willing to accept what's actually happening in their own country, and they're not willing to accept that people are not happy with current situation, and they're wanting change, they're wanting to move on, they're wanting the country to improve. They're so, should I say, hell-bent in keeping the country in the past. And it's disgusting that a woman whose best intentions to serve her country and bring about democracy has got to flee with her children. And that just says it all. To me, that just says it all. And it's about time the international community stepped in and start mediation and start talking, because this man is clearly unfit to govern any country.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Sam. Chris, do you have a comment on this? Lukashenko, widely regarded as a bit of a despot, 25 years now in charge, and is obviously being backed very much by Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, well, you just pigeonhole that into one. When you talk about Lukashenko, Putin, Trump, and Johnson all in the same sentence. And it makes for a very unpleasant battle of apples, to be quite honest with you. But I'm actually very interested in this latest development to hear that workers are actually taking, to activism about this. And I can only hope that out of this would come something replicating the Solidarność movement in Gdansk. And where the workers actually decide to not rise up, but actually decide to stand up towards their state employers and actually, tell them that it's really good enough in this 21st century.
Chris, I'm sorry to cut across you there. We'll need to move on. We're running a bit late here. The Greek military is on alert as tensions with Turkey rise. France conducted training exercises with Greek forces off the southern island of Crete today as tension persisted between Greece and Turkey over disputed waters in the eastern Mediterranean. Today's exercise was the first manifestation of French President Emmanuel Macron's commitment to temporarily reinforcing his country's presence in the eastern Mediterranean. France has called on Turkey to halt oil and gas exploration in disputed waters. The Greek Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, beg your pardon, discussed the situation in the region with Macron by telephone on Wednesday. French Armed Forces Ministry said that it was sending 2 Rafale fighter jets and the naval frigate Lafayette to the eastern Mediterranean. The frigate and the jets had arrived in Crete earlier today and carried out joint manoeuvres with Greek forces. Emmanuel Macron is a true friend of Greece and a fervent defender of European values and international law, Mitsotakis tweeted in French after the call with Macron. Tensions have simmered between NATO allies Greece and Turkey in recent days over overlapping claims to hydrocarbon resources in the Mediterranean's waters. Turkey says that it plans to open up some of the area for potential hydrocarbon exploration. And a precursor to that being, collecting seismic data it can process and sell to potential bidders. And both countries lay claim to the area. So, Sam, obviously this sounds like a fight over oil, and also it's unusual for the military of France to go to the rescue of another European country in this sort of situation. But they are all NATO countries, so presumably this is...
Oh, crikey, I don't really know much about the dispute between Turkey and Greece, so I'm going to decline to comment because I don't want to turn around and say something and it turns out to be incorrect or anything else. I will pass the baton over to Chris. I'm sure he will have something very interesting to say.
I appreciate that, thank you. Chris, briefly, if you would, your comments on this. Macron sending a couple of jets and a frigate to the Eastern Mediterranean. What is he saying by doing that?
Well, he's obviously trying to do active diplomacy on behalf of Europe. But because obviously of Sam's age, she doesn't probably remember the 70s, where we can go back and see that there was no love lost between Greek.
They
Greece
fought
and
over
Turkey.
Cyprus, didn't they? That was never really fully resolved.
Yeah. I am fully hopeful that it will get supported and resolved by the European Union. But I don't think it's very wise for Turkey to be rattling the boat at this moment in time, considering that they're constantly asking to try and get into the European Union.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, these actions are not going to get into the European Union at all.
Okay, Chris, well, thank you for that. Moving on now. And a new web-based tool commissioned by the Scottish Government will allow care homes to monitor the coronavirus COVID-19 trends and identify risks quicker. The Tourist Care Management Tool will launch on Friday the 14th of August and will allow all private and public sector care homes across the country to record in one place information including COVID-19 infection rates, demand on services and staff testing. This will mean care home managers, health and social care organisations and the Scottish Government can monitor trends, identify risks and take early action both during the current pandemic and also in the future. The care management tool, developed by the Scottish Government in collaboration with the Care Inspectorate, Scottish Care and the NHS Education Scotland, NES, will provide clearer national picture of conditions in care homes, early warning of emerging trends and issues allowing early interventions, and easier reporting to free up care home resources. The tool is for care home management use, and only identified staff will be able to access the information. Sam, this sounds like a good news story that the Scottish Government has created something which allows them to measure how things are going in the care homes. What's your reaction to this story?
Well, the thing is it's a good news story, and it's very much, I'm sure, within the care homes that will be very welcomed. As long as it's used correctly and people are going to use it correctly and the information is going to be shared amongst the care homes or, back to the health boards, because it's very important that COVID-19 is monitored, especially as we are trying to go back to some sort of normality. So, it's actually really good, really positive. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out over the next coming months, and hopefully it will be successful.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Chris, what's your take on this? A good scheme?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I was saying earlier on that COVID has presented us with a chance to actually have a radical reshake of social care. And actually advocate for the care homes to come back under the authority of the individual health boards around Scotland, so that we have greater oversight on the actual running of them. So many care homes are run by, dare I say, Tory donors,
Yep.
and they are, you won't be surprised to hear this, but they're run for profit. And obviously, being a socialist, I'm not too in favour of companies making profits out of other people's misfortunes in life.
Okay, well, listen, Chris, I'll need to stop you there because we've just got a couple more stories to do. The next story is also COVID-19 related. The rehabilitation and recovery of those who have had the coronavirus COVID-19, as well as those who have been affected by lockdown, is to be supported through a new rehabilitation framework. The framework will assist health boards as well as health and social care partnerships and independent and third sector health organisations with their planning for recovery and the rehabilitation services following the pandemic. It focuses on adults recovering from COVID-19 whose ongoing health problems, as well as those whose health has been affected by lockdown, including those who had treatment and procedures paused during the outbreak. So another good story, Sam. They're providing some help and support for those who have had the virus and also those who have been severely affected by it, maybe who have been in lockdown and unable to access health services.
Yeah, definitely another good news story, Gordon. The thing is one of the things that became apparent during the COVID crisis, which we're still in, it's not away yet, is basically the long-term effects of people that have had COVID, and we need to understand more what the effects are going to be and how it's going to affect people's lives in the future. So that does need to be, these people do need to have a lot support and to be assessed of what their individual needs will be. Also as well during the lockdown, but also with the up and coming, which we probably will have, hope not, is regional lockdowns where you're going to have a lot of mental health issues.
Yeah.
So people, and we had said that right from the start with lockdown, there was going to be high cases of mental health issues with people during lockdown. And even now we're coming out of lockdown, because there's a lot of people very anxious about returning to work, returning to school, going shopping, doing all these kind of things that we took for granted before. So we do need a lot of support in these sectors for the post-COVID.
Thanks, Sam. Very briefly, if you would, Chris, your reaction to this news of this new framework for those who have had COVID-19 or been affected by the lockdown.
Well, again, it just shows you the fact that we're living under a competent government who are trying to, as best they can, look after everyone and consider everyone's needs.
Yeah.
Obviously it has to be welcomed. And I would again refer back to what I said earlier on about the radical shake-up that the social care and the health service can have in Scotland. So I hope this is the first step of many to come.
Okay, Chris, thank you for that. And now to our final story this evening. And a Scots firm is to supply £53 million NHS order. Dumfriesshire-based Alpha Solway is to manufacture vital personal protective equipment. A major order to make personal protective equipment, or PPE, for NHS Scotland has been secured by the Scottish company. The £53 million order will be manufactured by Alpha Solway, based at Annan in Dumfriesshire. Alpha Solway, which secured the order through national supplier Arco, will make 232 million surgical masks and 2 million visors to meet the demand for Scotland's health and social care sectors until the summer of 2021. The company is also making an additional 6 million FFP3 respirator masks, which will meet around 87% of Scotland's health and social care needs. The order will support around 200 new jobs in addition to the 50 already created at Alpha Solway since the start of the pandemic. Now, the words silver lining spring to mind here, Sam, that out of all of the darkness and the bad news, a little bit of good news for an area which really needs some jobs. I mean, the Borders is notoriously bereft of industries, isn't it? So surely this must be a very good news story.
Yeah, it's a good news story, and it's good to see I'm going to say a local Scottish company getting the contract as well, because that will certainly help them, help the local economy, and hopefully that continues after the 2021 for them, because I imagine that COVID's not going to disappear very quickly, so
Yeah.
we are going to be constantly needing supplies of PPE. So, but no, it's a good news story, and the area deserves to have the jobs and have that extra support in the economy. So fantastic.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Chris, your reaction, I'm sure, as a union man, you'll be delighted by the creation of 200 new jobs. In fact,
Oh,
sorry, it's
excellent.
150 if you count the 50 that are already there.
Yeah. But for by that, the wider thing that I want to applaud is the hard work that Ivan McKee has been doing in the background
Yeah.
with regards, procurement and the development of new companies that are actually moving into the PPE sector.
Yeah.
You don't hear much about this from an English point of view. I don't know who's actually in charge of procurement in Westminster. So, but I do know Ivan. Ivan's got a great sense of business around him, and I just hope that the people in the Borders can actually see what the Scottish government are doing for them,
Yeah.
other than the fact that the Tory MSP is actually, was complicit in closing down the fish processing factory and moving it 150 miles into England. So,
Yeah.
it's actually the Scottish government that are providing jobs in the Borders, not your Tory MSPs.
Okay, Chris. Well, listen, thank you very much. And that just about rounds up all of the news for this evening. It just remains for me to do my usual thing and ask you if you want to support Broadcasting Scotland and become an active supporter, you can do that by following the instructions on your screen now. And you can go to our website, broadcastingscotland.scot/register, and follow the prompts. That's about it from Scotland at 7 this evening and from our studio in Cowcaddon. So it just remains for me to thank my two guests, Sam Payton and Chris McCusker. And I'll see you again on the next edition of Scotland at 7. Good night for now. Great.